Okay, no pressure, guys. It's you and me now. We are going to make this a brilliant first half of the first day of this event. So to do that, I think the very first thing we should do, of course, is to bring on our first speaker of the day. So Donna Lopez has had a counter to corporate career in beauty, doing everything from selling face-to-face to customers right through to turning an indie brand into a major industry player in just 18 months. That's some skills there. With Making Lemonade, she's now on a mission to educate and inspire the next generation of beauty bosses. So who better, quite frankly, to kick this event off? So I click here. We should have Donna on screen. Hello, Donna.
Hi, Chloe. Thank you so much for the kind intro.
My pleasure. As I said, it's awesome to have you here. Are you ready to go and help all our audience become better beauty bosses?
I would love to help us become some better beauty bosses. So very excited for that. Do I just kick it off now?
Yeah. If you want to share your slides, which should be somewhere around here.
One moment. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Are you good if I leave you to it?
Let me give this a shot here. I'm not the most technologically savvy individual, so
cool.
Let's go here.
Down the bottom of your screen, you should have that share screen, which should get us going. Okay. And if I do that, we should have. See, this is the thing, guys. We set up with new tech here, and just as we set up with new tech, I have to add your slide deck to the stream. That is exciting. That looks better, doesn't it?
Okay. Can you see my my screen?
Everyone can now see your screen and they can see you, and I'm going to disappear and leave you to it.
Okay. Well, I'm sad to see you go, but thank you.
Just yell if you need me because I'm watching too. All right?
Absolutely. So just a little bit about me, everyone. I am the founder and CEO of a new company called Making Lemonade. And this company is really sort of a passion project for me, as it is sort of what I believe is fulfilling my purpose for really why I came into this industry to begin with. My company really is built on the ethos of, taking opportunities and teaching brands, creators, influencers, and industry professionals and the next generation of beauty bosses how to distort the opportunities that are handed to them, how to first identify those opportunities and then turn them into lemonade. And I know that you're going to be hearing a lot of, lemon squeezy sort of remarks during this. So just bear with me, but we are very passionate about what we do here. And I'm so excited to introduce you to the community. This is really more than a resource. This is our company really is a community, and we really invite all of you, whether you're a brand, whether you're a marketing partner, whether you are a new professional, wherever you sit in this space, we are here to really help empower you on your journey, because we know that everybody's journey is unique in this industry. And I found a huge opportunity, even for myself, as if you know anything about my career, coming up and growing up in this industry, starting, at the bottom, literally working in store with people every single day, moving into very, very intense and exciting retailer like HSN and QVC as the head merchant for beauty and for makeup and for nails. And then moving on to become the vice president of merchandising for what became an industry disruptor, Box, and you might know them as BoxyCharm. And I was the vice president of merchandising there and brand development, and I helped to scale that company to massive success. And that was kind of the final proof I needed that I really wanted to go out on my own. But one of the major opportunities that I found is that there's not a lot of support when you're in that middle stage, right? When you're not quite big enough to where you need, an industry consultant, a coach, an agency, you're not quite big enough there. But then also, you've kind of grown past being able to take it all on yourself. So, giving you the tools and the empowerment to disrupt in the industry is something that I'm very passionate about. And in my first year in business, I really spent a lot of time going after all of these incredible projects where I had opportunities to disrupt in different areas of the space. And so I'm very passionate about this concept of disruption and creating trends, because something that I have known throughout my career, which is why I called my company Making Lemonade, because we are always making, we are always creating, we are always evolving. And the minute that you stop is the minute that your business stops growing. And so I know I spent quite a bit of time on the background, but it's a very big passion point for me. And it really is the foundation of my company, not just because of what we do for brands, what we do for influencers, what we do for the community, but truly why we do what we do. And our North Star is giving everyone in the community and basically lifting up the entire industry together by empowering each pillar of our industry. So I'm very excited to kick this off. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about it, but I'm excited to bring this up. And really this concept was built off of this ethos of the best way to predict the future is to create it, which is a very famous quote by Peter Drucker, and something that I've basically built my entire career on, which is, you can very easily find your way in the space, in the industry by copy pasting, tactics and strategies, but, you can follow trends, you can invest millions of dollars into trend predictions and industry insights. But the best way to predict the future truly is to create it for yourself and then allow the rest of the industry to catch up with you. That's truly the best way. And if once you're able to kind of dig into that, you're able to truly go in and figure out how your brand fits into this idea of a greater industry. So the first thing I always like to do is start with helping people to understand disruption, because truly the word disruption, I call disruptive in business. It's become the new authentic. And I wish that I could see you guys in a big room, because truly whenever I say this, everybody nods and thinks like, oh my gosh, if they hear the words just be disruptive or be authentic one more time, they're going to lose their minds, right? And that's the reality, is that this word disruptive has basically been loosely thrown around, in tech, it's been thrown around in startups, and it's almost rarely achieved because people don't really understand what it means to be disruptive, and understanding that there's different ways that you can disrupt. You can disrupt as a category, you can disrupt as an entire company. You can also just do a disruptive campaign to create brand relevance. And I think sometimes we as brands, and as I've been working directly with brand founders as long as I have, we chase this impossible goal of just disrupting, everything at every moment and not really understanding where your moment is to disrupt. And so defining disruption is key to understanding how you make your brand trend in a meaningful way, because creating a trend and being part of a trend actually isn't that hard, which I know a lot of people are always shocked when I say this, but doing that is not that difficult, but doing it meaningfully is incredibly difficult. So it really goes back to the understanding of being disruptive simply stems from the ability to see an opportunity that others do not see, but also knowing where your brand and your superpowers fit into this idea of disruption at a larger scale. So when I always go into my brand partners, I start with, typically when I start working with brands and my team starts working with brands, we always start with, okay, we want to prepare your brand for disruption. Are there opportunities where a brand can come out of nowhere, something goes viral overnight? Those things do happen. Are they easy to do in that scenario? Not quite as easy. So what we like to do is really partner to figure out where it makes sense for your brand to become disruptive in this industry. And I encourage you that if you're not working with a professional, to really sit down and figure out what it is that makes your brand special. What is your brand superpower, right? And then figure out what is your North Star and what is your why. And I always start with this because when I ask this question to many brands, especially when I'm working with larger corporations, and I'll ask, what is your why? Why do you want to create a disruptive campaign? Why do you want to create a new category to disrupt the industry? Why do you want to go after X, Y, Z? Okay. And the first thing they usually say, especially on a larger scale, is, oh, because my competitor did it and now I need to catch up. Well, the moment that you hear those words, you're already behind and you're already in trouble. And so I always say you have to have a why that's bigger than simply because my competitor did it. And the reason for that is because if you don't know your why, then you're not going to be able to create purposeful campaigns or a purposeful product, right? Or a purposeful company, depending on which area you're going to disrupt. And you'll hear me throughout the course of this refer to disruption in these buckets, because the reality is again, you can be disruptive and create brand awareness and brand relevance without having to disrupt an entire industry. Sometimes, again, we make things bigger than they need to be. And so I really like to find what is your why and what is the reason why you're trying to disrupt. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the only way to truly disrupt a market, an industry, a platform is to provide value. Now, value can come in many forms, right? But the need for content and product are in abundance. This is not something that is scarce right now. So a lot of brands really struggle with, how do I find my space, whether they're creating a product or a campaign? How do I find my space within this, big industry? And the reality is, when you come back to the why, you start from a place of creating value. What's in it for them? What's in it for the audience? Let's say it's a piece of content. Is there trending content that doesn't seem to provide value? Yes. But in reality, when you really drill down, sometimes value can be pure entertainment. It can be engagement. It can be something very simple that seems like, well, how is that creating value for the audience that I'm putting this in the market to, or the eyeballs that I'm getting this in front of? But when you think about the things that are trending today, and obviously probably our most viral moments have been on TikTok in the past year. And when you look at these moments in time, you see that there are times where it's okay to have a disruptive moment that is purely for entertainment value, just getting your name out there, surrounding the content around a particular pillar of your brand, versus it doesn't always have to be everything, right? And so I like to just always remind the brands, because what ends up happening is when you start comparing, I always say that comparison really cramps creativity, because when you start comparing to, oh, X brand has a $5 million budget and that's why they were able to do that and be disruptive. They just paid for it. And then you basically count yourself out of opportunities that are organic where you can be disruptive. So I always like to start with the why. Then we go into, how do you find the lemon? So are you trying to disrupt a market or create a trend within a market? They are two different things, or they can be two different things. Getting into the soul of your brand and using your brand's superpower to fill the gap. So once you truly know what your brand's superpower is and what it brings to the table for the market that you're trying to disrupt, that's when you're really able to start seeing, oh, there's an opportunity here. Maybe there's a platform that has been undiscovered. Maybe there's a platform that there's a perception that your brand wouldn't play into that, which I'm going to get into that in a moment, because it really comes back to breaking free of, perspectives sometimes. And a lot of times when I go into brands, the big fight is really getting everyone from point A to the point of starting the execution of the campaign. And when you start at point A and you understand, here's the lemon that I'm looking for. I'm really trying to find this moment in time. I'm trying to, there's an opportunity, there's something that's trending that your brand plays into that you can then create a campaign around and disrupt. Sometimes it's as simple as that, guys. And I know it sounds like very vague, but it truly is. You have to look at this through this lens of finding the opportunities in order to distort. And then I go into squeeze it, right? So find the lemon. And once you find this lemon, you squeeze it, right? And disruption begins as an opportunity to distort, but that time clock runs out quickly these days. Get buy-in as quickly as possible and squeeze the day immediately. This is a huge opportunity for a lot of brands as they're going through the process of, I'm going to create X campaign to disrupt the industry, or I'm going to create this product which is going to disrupt the category. what ends up happening, especially with my larger brands and some of my smaller brands too, is that they spend so much time in the boardroom that they forget that by the time that they're done, all the brainstorming and debating and discussing, somebody else has already done it. Okay. So I always say a lot of the TikTok campaigns actually that have gone viral, and I had an amazing opportunity in my first year of business to partner with movers and shakers, who I believe you're going to hear from at some point during this conference. But I had the opportunity to partner with movers and shakers on the very, very viral Eyes, Lips, Face campaign with e.l.f. Cosmetics. And one of the major things is people had the assumption when we were done that there was, a year of planning went into it. They whipped this campaign around like this because there was an opportunity and they knew it was time to strike, right? And so just as, TikTok was starting to kind of make its way, into the space, and at that point, there really weren't a lot of brands who had been very, very successful at understanding that space. And movers and shakers are just geniuses. And I was very honored to have the opportunity to work with them on this. But because of their genius and e.l.f.'s urgency, we were able to execute upon a campaign very quickly. And we were able to strike before everything had already been saturated. And that's why it's so important to stop just discussing time and time again in the boardroom what we're going to do, why we're going to do it, a meeting to have another meeting to have another meeting. Have an idea, try it, and go disrupt. So go squeeze the day, go squeeze the opportunity. As soon as you've identified what your lemon is, go squeeze it immediately. You have no time to waste because content is of abundance, okay? And the consumer is being inundated with content every single day and many, 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 many times a day. So it's important that if you're going to go in and disrupt and with the intention of creating a shakeup in your space, then you absolutely need to strike immediately. So this is another thing that I love to talk about, which are sort of the do's and don'ts of disruption. And I'll go into a little bit of background on some of these as I go through. And then I'm going to kind of give you some examples of some brands that I've worked with and some companies that I've had the opportunity to be a part of. So one thing that I always start with, which you heard me mention earlier, is do provide value to the market. Now, interestingly enough, I actually when I worked for BoxyCharm, it was a very interesting time, because they had just come into the space. So when I joined, it was me and the CEO and the founder and a COO. And those were really the main three, the only two executives that were in the space or in the company at the time. And so when I came in, they were just starting to kind of, get their bearings. They were growing at a really healthy pace, but they were just kind of deciding, okay, what's our main position? They didn't have, anybody heading up marketing yet. So they were in just kind of, but they had really mastered influencer marketing already, just from the sheer value of the product that they were putting into market. And to give you guys a little bit of background, when BoxyCharm came to market, there was Ipsy, there was Birchbox, there was Glossybox, there was a few boxes, FabFitFun, but this was really the first box to come to market that was full size, okay? With the exception of FabFitFun, but as far as an all beauty box, it was really the first and major box to come to market in full size. Now, what's really interesting about that is, that was the message that was being driven home over and over and over again. And so when I came into the company and I sat down with the CEO and the COO, and there was, some other new VPs and directors that had started, and, we were all just having a brainstorming session, just talking about, kind of really what I was doing, because it was my first week in the company. And I had asked them, okay, I'm creating now brand decks because I'm going to go pitch the brands on the value and what's different about BoxyCharm. And they looked at me almost like I was crazy. They gave me this look of, well, what do you mean? You don't know this? We're the first full size beauty box, in the space. And I looked at and they looked at me with this look, and I said, that's a position for sure, but that's just one thing, and that's very easily copied. So I need us to come up with something else, because just going to a brand and saying, by the way, we're full size and this is why we're super valuable, our community, et cetera, is not enough. because number one, all it would take is a more established box, because at this point, as I mentioned, the majority of the subscription box industry was sample size, okay? So we did have a really good cult following and we did have an interesting demographic. But what was really interesting about this meeting was that even our own team didn't know what our true disruption piece was. Now, being full size was certainly a disruption and it certainly caused a shakeup. But what I said to them is true disruption really comes from something that is not easily imitated. So when it comes down to the end of that story, I said to them in this meeting, being full size isn't good enough. And I will never forget like the look of everyone's faces in the room because nobody had really considered it. And I said, this is the true moment of, we're growing. All that has to happen at this point, if we don't come up with something new now, the next thing that's going to happen is Ipsy's going to launch full size. This box is going to launch full size. And then it's game over for us. And our entire point of difference is gone. Right. And it was a moment where we all were a little nervous, but also very excited because now we had an opportunity to truly take the lemon and make some lemonade out of it. And the reality was that what we decided to do from there was create exclusives within the box and creating these incredible partnerships, collaborations, which of course now you see in the masses as well. But it was a really interesting time because it took our competition a long time to catch up with us from that perspective. Because when we came out of nowhere, not only with just great full-size products with incredible brands, we came out with exclusives that you couldn't get in retail, a brand new launch, something that you weren't even going to see in store yet, that then fed into the market. And it was a really interesting time for us because it put us in a really beautiful place of prestige that we hadn't seen before. And so we not only grew our entire subscription base substantially in the 12 to 18 months that we implemented that immediate strategy, it really helped us to grow, to scale, but also provided incredible loyalty to our brand because we were the innovators in the market. We weren't just throwing product in a box and shipping it out the door. We were creating something new, exciting, exclusive. When we created, what the world knows today as FOMO, fear of missing out. And that's another piece to do's and don'ts of disruption, is that you want to create a fear of missing out, a sense of urgency, something you have to either see, engage with, participate in with now, right? So one of the major successes of TikTok is because of the fact that when you create a trend or you do something that goes viral on TikTok, people want to jump on that trend immediately because it's fun, it's engaging, it's exciting, which leads me into do a dance in uncharted and failed territory. And I always say do a dance in this uncharted and failed territory, which always freaks people out. But when you do this dance in uncharted territory, and then I'll get to the failed territory in a moment, when you do this dance in uncharted territory, it really is a celebration because most of the time, the reason why brands are not disruptive is because they're afraid. They're afraid to go into uncharted territory. And it's a really interesting space to be in because, it's really hard to get executive buy-in, investor buy-in, even audience buy-in when it's something that doesn't exist. It's a lot easier to take something that exists and make it better. I think there's an argument to both sides of that, of course. But while there's a little bit of a sense of ease in that journey, because you do have a playbook that you can sort of start to see where they win, where they fail, their missteps, you can kind of track that along the way and you have the opportunity to optimize. It also means that you're not going to be a true innovator. And when you're a true innovator, you can do this celebration, this dance in this uncharted territory that you were able to conquer as a brand. And this next part, when I talk about failed territory or being in failed territory, this is something that really scares, especially with some of my larger brand partners that I work with, where the history in a particular category, the history in a particular space, the history on a particular platform, a style of campaign, when there's failure as the track record with other brands, it's really hard to get buy-in to be able to move a strategy like that forward. But I always say, don't be afraid of other people who failed to try to do what you wanted to do. Maybe there's a reason for that. And obviously you have to do your due diligence and your analysis, which is part of like what my company does to help brands to disrupt in their spaces. But the reality is that when you come back to this moment of, remembering who you are and who your brand is and what makes your brand special, and if you have a solid foundation for that, there's a much higher rate of success opportunity there. And where I find that brands have misstepped or failed in certain spaces, it's because they were maybe too true to their brand, which I'll get into in a moment in the don't side. Maybe they were almost too true to their brand, and they didn't take into account the audience and the eyeballs that were on them, to be able to disrupt that particular audience or that particular market. So it's a really interesting space because, once you're able to conquer something, and I think about the TikTok campaign a lot and a lot of things on TikTok, because that was a territory that was both uncharted, but also beauty. There had really not been any incredible results in beauty at the time when we first came in. There had been a couple of strong campaigns, but there really wasn't anything that was overwhelmingly successful, that they felt like it was really worth it to continue down. And it was immediately written off. In fact, I spoke to some brands who had tried some TikTok campaigns and then contacted me after I had worked on with Movers and Shakers this e.l.f. campaign. And they said, I don't get it. We did TikTok, we did the whole thing, and it didn't do well. And I said, well, when you look at your global strategy, you basically took your playbook for marketing and you applied it to the TikTok audience, which is completely the wrong thing to do. And so when you find this moment of, a lot of people, you have to be really, really self-aware when you're trying to disrupt. And so when you really look at the playbook of what you did or what X brand did that caused them to potentially flop on this particular, platform or in this space or the product, wherever they fell flat, you can take those learnings and optimize for yourself and then apply your superpowers for it. Just because somebody else failed at it, I always say, they are not you. And at the end of the day, you are, a hero in your space, and what your strengths are as a brand, and what your opportunities are as a brand. And so it's up to you to be incredibly self-aware during this time as you're developing a strategy for disruption to really drive forward the results. So it's important that you really take a look at the entire landscape as you're building out these strategies. Do know when to bring in a professional. Recently, I had someone reach out from a very large brand who they are known for disruption in the industry. In fact, their entire brand was based off of disruption. And a major brand called me and asked me to come in. And her exact words to me were, I know where my strengths are, and they are not the strengths that your team has. So we're going to need to bring you in. And whether it's my company or whether it's, even looking to for getting a professional, if you're trying to disrupt, if you're trying to get a hold of the Gen Z market, you should probably ask someone who's Gen Z what they think of the campaign that you've pulled together. Don't just rely on the people in the boardroom. Go beyond and figure out who it is that's going to tell you. Ask a creator, have them sign an NDA and ask a creator what they think. Take a TikTok creator and have them come in and collaborate to help you with creating an incredible TikTok campaign. Same thing with if you're going to disrupt another platform like Twitch or something that's really interesting and unique that's not your basic playbook of marketing tactics and social media today. You go with the people who actually are experts in the space. Don't limit yourself to just the people that are sitting around in your executive team. Go out beyond and start to ask the people who can really help you and collaborate with them so you can actually build a successful strategy together. You're not going to know everything, and we don't know everything. That's why we even bring in people when there is a territory that we haven't, gone in before. We'll pull experts from different platforms, different categories to ensure that we develop a very successful campaign for our brand partners. So going into the don'ts, don't let your brand position limit you. If I had $1 for every single time one of my brands said, oh, that's not on brand for us, I could retire. I could truly retire. Now, while I believe that it's important because I do believe in brand positions, I do believe that they strengthen the success of your brand. I do believe they strengthen the success of your marketing campaigns. I do say don't allow your brand position to limit you. Because just because you're where your brand sits today doesn't mean that that's where your brand has to stay tomorrow, or that, you know, a whole nother generation is coming in. Don't allow your brand position to limit you. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to subscribe to every trend. You find your places where you can play, where it feels authentic, another one of our favorite words, but when it feels like it actually makes sense with your brand. You know, if you're a brand that you know, typically is more mature, you know, your age range, you know, is, you know, 40 plus or 50 plus, that doesn't mean that you can't play in spaces that are more Gen Z and millennial focused. What maybe you do is like a mother-daughter campaign, or a sister, you know, a sister to an aunt, or whatever the case is. You can play in this space very differently. You don't have to do it in a way that doesn't feel authentic to your brand or your brand position. But also in that same breath, don't let your brand position limit you. Don't put those limitations on yourself. And that leads me into my next point, which is don't underestimate your audience. This is a big one for me too, because what I hear from a lot of brands is, oh, my audience doesn't respond to that, or my audience won't go on TikTok, or my audience would never be on Twitch. My audience would never. Now, maybe they're not sitting there as gamers on Twitch all day long, but I do know there's a huge market for, there's professional coaches that are on Twitch. There are relationship guidance, you know, guidance counselors that are on Twitch. There's so many different opportunities for different platforms and different spaces that you can actually go after. Even at HSN, when I was a buyer at HSN, I'll never forget this moment, because I was sitting in a room with our executive team, and we were working with Too Faced at the time. And we wanted to bring in, you know, one of their top selling lipsticks at the time was this iridescent holographic blue lipstick. And everyone on the executive team said, no, we're not going to bring it in. We can't bring it in. We can't bring it in. And, you know, our audience won't like that. We're only going to buy a small amount. Okay, fine, we'll bring it in, but we're only going to buy a small amount. So we finally brought in this product, which our audience at HSN is primarily 40s, 50s, and above. And that's our core customer as well. Actually, our core customer was even above 50. But knowing that, it was really fascinating, because we got it in and sold out immediately. And our entire team was very confused. Like, what is she doing with this blue unicorn lipstick, right? Now, it was more of an iridescent, but even still, they were all wondering, what is she doing with this lipstick? So we brought in another round, and we brought in another round. It became our #1 selling lipstick in the category. And it was because and if we had not gone after it and at least tested it, we would have never known that our audience was completely fine with wearing a blue holographic lipstick. No problem whatsoever. And so it's these moments of, don't underestimate your customer. Sometimes he or she will surprise you in ways that you never expected. Throw it out there, do a test. Don't play it safe, which leads me into our last comment, which is do not play it safe. If you want to truly disrupt in any industry, you cannot play it safe. And I cannot tell, and that doesn't mean go out and blow your entire budget. But what that means is test, try, learn. What's the worst thing that can happen? Invest a little bit, because you do have to pay to play, whether you're paying creators or whether you're paying, you know, for, you know, a particular unique formulation or a collaboration. You're going to pay for it somewhere along the line. But at the end of the day, do not play it safe. And a lot of brands, you know, they don't feel comfortable because they don't have, you know, the data, the backup. And sometimes when you're going into a place of disruption, you have to go to the best data point, which is your gut. And that's, at the end of the day, sometimes it's as simple as that. And I know, you know, it's kind of like the this, you know, when you work in this space where you partner with brands, whether you are, you know, an agency or a consultant, you know, whatever your terminology is, right? And I don't really like to call us an agency, because we really dive in deep with our brands and we really become one with them. And we really have valuable partnerships with our brand partners, but also with our creators and our professionals that we coach as well. But, you know, I don't really when you think about that from that perspective, like there's kind of like this taboo moment where you don't want to give away too much information or tell the brands too much how to do it themselves, because then they don't need you, right? But at the end of the day, like we all have a gut. And I always tell my brands, like whether you hire us or not, whether you hire a creator, whether go with your gut, because at the end of the day, that is where you're going to see the truth, right? The truth is going to come out of you from that perspective. And when you know that something doesn't feel right or something just seems strange, forget what your logic tells you, because sometimes logic in terms of creating something really that is going to provide an incredible shakeup, the logic in your brain gets in the way. Okay. And I've sat in meetings with, all the data people that told me every single thing that was going to go wrong if I move forward with X category, or I move forward with X plan, or, well, I don't see this. And then all of these brands that failed doing this. If I wanted to, I could literally tell you 1,000 times where I've sat in a room with varying executive teams for companies that I've worked for, as in I was employed by them, and also worked with as far as my post corporate career with making lemonade. And I've gotten all the reasons why I shouldn't do something, or why they don't want to, or why we shouldn't. And when we tried it and when we did it, we were extremely successful. So there are times that you're going to have to get buy-in from your executive team, from your partners, from your investors, and you're going to have to fight for something that you're not quite sure is going to work, but in your gut, there's an opportunity there. Generally speaking, that is the truth. And that is what's going to end up happening and manifesting for your incredible brand. So these are just a few of like my basic do's and don'ts of, figuring out where you fit in this realm, and also hopefully making it a little bit more digestible for you that you can be disruptive as a brand. You don't have to have 1 billion views or 20 billion views to be disruptive. You can be disruptive in your own category. You can be disruptive with your own audience. You can be disruptive within your own community. You can be disruptive, in a product. You can be disruptive in an entire market. You can be disruptive in any difference in many different scales and many.
Unfortunately now, Donna, I'm going to have to be disruptive, because
please stop me. I talk a lot, so I'm stopped.
No,
done.
And it's amazing. I have to say, I have almost completely lost track of the time myself, and I can see some other people here who are kind of like absolutely loving what you're saying. But we do have to wrap yours up. So, no, Donna,
thank you. I could go on for hours about this. So feel free to connect with me you can email me anytime. I'm also on LinkedIn, of course, and you can follow our company on social. We are sort of redoing some things with our social, so I'm very excited to have you guys as part of our community. Thank you for listening to me blab on about how to be disruptive in the industry, because it's obviously a huge passion point for me. And I will let you guys go and move on with the rest of your conference. Keep talking.
You've been a star. Thank you, Donna. It's been absolutely brilliant having you here.